All right, back on the Chevy. Let's see if we can get this front window regulator figured out.
No, you're not bringing home another piece of junk.
Okay, so this is where we're at. So this is the glass that came out of the front door, and this is the original track in pieces. And this little track bolts on here, and then the window regulator rides into this guy. So, and I gave you some bad information that this didn't have a front and back track on this front window that they ride in. They actually do. This is the rear track. And so it slides down in there. This bolts in the door. And then the front track, it slides down in the channel on the wing window. So what I need to do, I cut my plywood here to extend this out 8 inches. So move this out of the way. So that's what I did there. And on this top channel, this little piece here, I cut out of the back window. So I saved it and it's gonna go in there. And then this is what your channel looks like. So I went to actually a couple of hardware stores today trying to find some channel this size. Couldn't come up with anything. But I did come up with some square tubing that is roughly the same size as the channel. So I got a strip of it and I took my cutoff wheel and cut the top of it out. So what I'm going to do, and this fits on this pretty good, this is going to go in here, and I'm going to have to cut this bracket off and mount it, and I weld it in this spot. This little bracket here actually rusted off of there, so it's going to go in this spot, and then this back piece here I'm going to have to cut off here. It's going to go back in this spot, and then this piece of trim bolts to this. So I'm going to have to extend this 8 inches. Right here is the piece I cut out of the back window. So I'm going to weld it onto here, and that should put me right where I need to be. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just take some silicone and just put a few dots around in here and kind of glue this whole thing together to hold it. I want it to come apart relatively easy, or be able to get it apart. But I want it to hold together so I can test it on the door. So that's what we're going to do. And looking at everything, it looks like this is going to work out much better than the back window did. So extending this out like this and putting a longer channel on it is really not going to make that much of a difference. The window regulator ain't going to care, because it's still going to have plenty of room to travel in here. It'll just do the same travel, and it should raise the window and lower it just like it did before. And then all this being in this back track should support everything, shouldn't have any problems. Famous last words, but shouldn't have any problems. Okay, so we are going to cut these guys off of here, relocate them where they need to be on here, do a little spot welding, and we'll be back. Okay, so I got everything cut off this track. This thing was so rusted out, you couldn't have used it anyway. And I transferred everything over to this track. So I just got it spot welded on there now, on both sides, just in case I got to cut something loose and move it, then it'll be easy enough to move it. And then I just took that other piece of track and just stubbed it onto the end of this one, and that should be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this and we're going to glue this thing together and just let it dry so that we can so that I can test everything out on it once it's done. And I'll have to screw that track back in the door. Another thing I'm going to be doing is I ordered some epoxy primer. Get this from TCP Global or TPC Global, one of the two. Anyway, I painted, I guess about 4 cars with their stuff, and it's good paint. I usually just use the single stage urethane or the single stage enamel, and I really like the looks of how it come out. You know, I've done some base clears too, and for the money, it didn't look that much better than this stuff does. And I think you get a gallon of color with the hardener and the reducer for, depending on the color, you know, 100, 120, 140 bucks, something like that. So well worth it. Alright, so I'm just gonna do this in a couple of spots. Goes in here. I was trying to figure out about TIG welding this top frame back together, and I don't know if I'm going to worry about it or not. When the window's all the way up, you're not going to see that seam. And when the window's all the way down, you're not going to see that seam. So, don't worry about that part when we get to it. I'm going to let this dry overnight on this one. I just want it to stay together for testing purposes. Stuff will come off easy. Okay. So we'll let that dry. We'll bolt this track back in. I've already got the wing window track kind of sitting in there. And then we're going to try it and see if it works. If this works all right, I need to extend the rod for the door opener on the inside, which I saved the old rods so I can stub onto those and make a longer rod. And that's about it. Hopefully this is all going to work. It's going to work better than that back one. Okay. Okay, so everything is dry on this thing now, and it's held together pretty good. It's not going to fall apart on me when I try to put this in the car. And then over here on the car, I did some work in here. Actually got the handle working, which it wasn't before, and I got the inner handle mounted, and had to extend that shaft so that the inner handle is working. And I went in and just dropped this in. It's not bolted in, it's just sitting there. And I got the rear track for the window bolted in. So the next thing we're going to try to do, we're going to set this window in there and get the window regulator in there. There's a little piece of track that goes along here for one of the rollers. I'm going to have to relocate and bolt in there. I think this was one of the bolts for it, and this was one of the bolts for it. So once we do that, if I can get this rolling up and down successfully, then we're going to pull all that back apart. And if everything lines up good there, we'll pull that window out. And I'm going to go ahead and take some, clean this off good with some lacquer thinner. Maybe go over it once more, see I don't see any flash rust on it, so it's been doing pretty good out here. The humidity's been down around here. So I'm going to go ahead and take some epoxy primer and spray this side. Mask off a couple of things, and then we're going to start on disassembling the other side. So let's get this window in and see if it's actually going to work. All right, I'm calling this a success. So this thing lays right in on that gasket with this other window, interlocks real nice with it. The gap's good across here. And it does roll up and down. It's a little sketchy having this rough edge plywood in there. You have to kind of persuade it to get it up and down. But it does go all the way down, and it does go all the way up. So, like I said, it's a little sketchy because I got this rough plywood in there and it's kind of catching on stuff. So once I got the glass in there, it should work really good. But the measurements on the regulator came out exactly right where they need to be, and it's sitting in the track right where it needed to be. And I kind of measured off the other side, and like I said, it lines right up with that. Once you get it up and down right, it lines right up with that rear gap. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to blow all this apart, and I'm going to mix up some epoxy primer, and we're going to cover this side. And then I'm getting close to, I might have to do a stopping point on this project because I think I said before, I've traded a buddy of mine's got a 69 GMC truck that I'm going to be painting for him. So he's going to be bringing that down probably in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to get going on that. I'm going to do some videos on that. And so we may be pausing on this for a while and doing videos on the truck. So anyway, let's blow this apart. We'll tape a few things off and we'll get some primer mixed up. So another little thing I thought I'd show on here was this worked out kind of nice. So this is your inner door release, and it's working good. But I noticed on the post cars, the armrest for the front doors is really short, and I thought that would look kind of goofy on here. But the armrest for the hardtop car is this one, and it kind of covers that up. And actually, if you look at that in proportion to the door, that's actually a pretty good size. So I think that is gonna look pretty good on there when when the interior is done and the inside is done. It won't look like it's got a 4-door armrest on a 2-door car. That's nice and long, so that's kind of cool. All right, another just a little quick word of advice here. When I'm doing a project and I do like one side of a car or one long stretch of work, and I'm getting ready to switch over kind of to another mode, I go through and clean my work area up, because this was just full of tools and screws and grinding dust and sanding dust and little sharp chunks of metal that always seem to find your knee when you kneel down. And so it helped me a lot to stop and just clean everything up, put all my tools away before I start on the other side, and stay a little more organized and not falling over junk. So I went ahead and welded this brace back in. I'm going to put a brace under the floor for this thing, because here's where the brace was, and if you reach under here, you can feel there's a body brace there, but there's nothing back here. So I'm going to try to come up with some kind of plate to come off of this and just catch the bottom of that later on, once I get to a little more of the finished work, just to sturdy that up. I mean, it's solid as a rock, but if somebody would hit you there, you probably want something a little extra under there. Okay, so got everything back apart on here, and I am going to wipe all this thing down, sweep a little bit, tape a couple things up that I don't want the primer to get on, and we're going to mix up some of that epoxy primer and just shoot this side to protect it while we start on the other side. And so I wiped this whole thing down with some lacquer thinner, and I went over with a tack rag. Didn't do a whole lot of taping, just kind of covered up some things I don't want overspray to get on, and put a little tape on for some cut lines. Like I said, the whole car is going to get painted anyway, so if it gets a little overspray on something, it's not a big deal. So this is what I'm using for epoxy primer. Comes from TCP Global. Pretty good stuff. It's 50-50. I mixed up about 12 ounces, and that should be enough to do what I want to do. So I'll set this up over there and we'll shoot this side. on, give it about 15 minutes and give it another one. Alright, so I got a couple coats on. I'm just not real happy with the way it came out. Just having trouble with that gun. It was spitting and just wasn't atomizing good. I had, you know, my air pressure was good, the mix was good. Gun was clean. That's a gun I used for primer many times and never had problems with it. So I don't know if it was something in the product or what, but you can see it's just kind of streaky and grainy. So I put several coats on it. That took a pint to do that, so hopefully I can block that out and smooth it and not have to do it again. But I need to figure out what's going on with that before I primer the rest of it, because I don't want to fight that again. But kind of once you get going, you gotta finish it. Okay, so that's all for today. So make sure you hit like, hit subscribe. Should be doing another video in within the next week or so here, and we're going to start disassembling the other side, do the same thing, start working on the driver's door first. I'll get the back door off first and get the B-pillar out, and then start figuring that driver's door out now that I've kind of got my measurements figured out of where they need to be, so that should be good. Share this video. Like I said, like, subscribe, and we'll be back soon.